Good day. Welcome to another edition of Conversations, a program sponsored by the Methodist Church in the British Virgin Islands. Our focus in this series is on Methodist heritage, where we talk about the history of the Methodist Church in the British Virgin Islands. And we spoke in another previous edition about education and its impact on the British Virgin Islands. And we've continued these conversations. Today, I have with me as my guest Mrs. Eileen Parsons. And Ms. Parsons is here to speak with us today about Methodist social witness, what it is that the church has been doing in the community. Mrs. Parsons, welcome and thank you for agreeing to be with us today.
Thank you for having me. I have to say, I am honored.
Well, it's a pleasure to sit with you because I know there's no dull moment when we sit and have a conversation with you because of your vast experience. But today we want to zero in on that experience as it relates to the church and as it relates to what it is the church was doing and in the community and impacting the community. I don't know if we'll start out with you in terms of what jumps out at you when I talk about Methodist social witness and the areas that you have experienced?
I would have to talk about my early life here and when I came home for summers with my grandparents up Langlook and part in the country. In my childhood here, your home revolved around the church. The church was the social life, you could say, of the community. Wherever there was a Methodist church in this country, at least on Tortola that I know of, every Wednesday night there was a prayer meeting. And then the church interacted with you uh, in those days before festival. The churches, Anglican and Methodist, interacted in the social life of the community by having what was then called Fete on the Field. 1 year as long as there's an August, there's going to be an August Monday.
Yeah.
And 1 year, the Methodists would host the Fete on the Field, where there by the bandstand was the field. They would build a big coconut, we used to say coconut fix tent, and they would cook food. What we know then as our food, the corn pork and the dough pork and the mutton and all that sort of thing. And it is said, I can't prove it, but it is said that when the Methodists kept Fete on the Field, the food was the best. For the Methodist cooks were women from the country who
Okay.
knew how to pump up the seasoning. They would never tell you what they put in it, but they would give you some, but they ain't going to show you how to make it. And the food was well seasoned. When the Anglicans kept it, they always selected a young lady to be Miss St. George's. And then where the church interacted in the life of the community was at harvest. Dr. Angel, harvest was a time when family, friends got together. People came from St. Thomas. I remember there was no wharf over here. You came on the islander and you were taken off in a rowboat and brought into shore. And it was a social event. You look forward to harvest. And every congregation had its own harvest Sunday. There was only one ordained minister. You had your local preachers, but the ordained minister would go from village to village keeping harvest Sunday. Your friends came from St. Thomas. And I remember, well, as a child West End, you would cook a lot of food because your family came in from the country and so forth. I am very amazed at how it has changed. And I must say, I don't think that we should have allowed anybody to come and embroider on our culture. Harvest Sunday was part of our culture.
So in in essence, then what you're saying, well, with regards to the fete and the feast, so that was a one big picnic.
One big picnic.
One big picnic that encompasses everybody. But then the origins of that picnic, I was told, went back to Major Peebles when he did fundraising to build what was then the Cottage Hospital. And then after that, they said, well, they can do a picnic, because before that, the picnics were held in communities. Every village had their own picnic. So they came together, had one big picnic, and then after that, the churches took it over. So then, as you say, it was called the Fete on the Field.
Fete on the Field.
So Anglican one year, Methodist the other year. And that was a major fundraising event. But then bringing the whole of the BVI together.
For the Methodists, the money was raised for the church.
Okay.
It wasn't raised for any individual. It was a church affair. It was raised for the church.
So that would have been a major fundraiser for the church. In terms of its mission and its outreach program.
While the food was sold, about the 10 cents a plate, and you got everything, and but still in those days 10 cents was 10 cents.
Okay.
And you know, and a lot of people turn out. A lot of people turn out for it, and so it was a fundraiser for the church.
And then with the harvest now, again, what you're pointing out to is that the harvest in every community, people went from one community to the other. And everybody supported it. So that became the major social event of that community.
And you could tell me, you are a local preacher, Harvest Sunday starts when? October to down to November?
Yes, September, October in that area.
September, October in that area.
Yeah.
Because I remember every village where there was a church used to have its own Harvest Sunday. And you look forward to Harvest Sunday. Here on Tortola, people who had horses rode, or you went by boat or you walk. You turn off early in the morning, because in those days walking was nothing for us. You walk wherever you had to go. And say like my family from the country, just drawing a reference, would come down here to your people, to Mr. Jimmy and Miss Martha. Then no Katie, when them come in, they're going to cook extra. They say put in stranger water. And because you may not see them again for the rest of the year. So it was a social event in the life of the church and the life of the community.
Well, it's interesting, because what I remember most growing up in Cane Garden in preparation for Harvest Sunday was on the Saturday night before the harvest was last practice. And when it was last practice, everybody in the community came to hear the last practice. Why? Because the church was reserved for the guests on that Sunday. So everybody came to last practice, so that the choir, all the different groups are going to perform. The program would run straight through, and everybody would gather, because then on Sunday, I know my aunt was very busy preparing food, because everybody was coming to her house.
And the thing, Dr. Angel, in those days, the churches, especially Methodist churches, there used to be a wash with food. A wash with potato, banana, and bunches of bananas. Long, the 15, 16 hand, and oh my goodness, cane, whatever. In those days, we produced food and we carried it, as they say, the first fruit of your harvest was taken to the
I know they talked about the men in the village here, we're here in Cane Garden Bay, where the competition was out to see who could produce the largest bunch of banana. So you came with one with 15 hands. Next year somebody has to get one more than that, because that was the joy.
The prize had to go to Carrot Bay. Carrot Bay was the home of over here was cane. From the sea up to the hill was cane in Cane Garden Bay. And Carrot Bay was the home of what I used to call them banana wharf.
A banana
wharf.
Up
in my village, was a home a potato. I believe my stepfather had a ground from below my house almost down to Road Bay. And in those days, you ship where you carry the best and you give it to the church, and it was sold the Monday morning, the afternoon, and the Monday morning.
So the witness, the social witness, again, we see where in the church the whole concept of the prayer meetings. Because again, even talking with my father growing up, those became major events in communities when there was a prayer meeting. People came from different communities to be a part of them.
Not only that, I spoke to Father Branch and I said, I do not know what had happened in my country, but you notice people no longer get the spirit. When I was a child, prayer meeting, you had to hold down people because the spirit used to, at least then it used to strive with men. You could hear, I got to Sankey sing out the second Sunday, and the loveliest hymns, not a soul moving. They get up to dance, but the people no longer get the spirit. What? You're a preacher. What has happened?
Well, as you said, maybe the spirit no longer strives with us. We have to now come back up to that level. But in essence, what we're saying is that the church then had this whole concept in terms of its outreach to the community. So we see the social side of the church, how it impacted the community. In the prayer meetings that were held, the team meetings that were held, because these were events organized by the church that brought the community together.
Cantatas too.
Harvest cantatas and other cantatas.
And other cantatas and so forth. And then, to me, even in the St. Thomas of my childhood, people reverence the church. The church was a part of your social life. And of course, then we believe in God and honestly believe in God. You were taught to pray and you went to Sunday school. They didn't send you to Sunday school. You were taken to Sunday school. And you had to be very, very sick not to go to Sunday school on Sunday.
So. There is another interesting side, Ms. B, which I'm sure you can show some light on in this conversation in terms of the church here in the BVI, the impact of the church and our commitment to the Methodist Church, the fact that we saw Methodism as being that all-embracing organization that we highly respected and we felt very much a part of, to the point where persons who migrated from the British Virgin Islands went across to the US Virgin Islands. In some cases, they then went over there and started a Methodist church. I had the privilege of sitting with Ms. Daisy Colwood and telling me about how the Methodist church in St. John was started in her house. Because as a Methodist from Kenya, she left, went over there, she and her husband, and they then started bringing people together, and the Methodist church started to grow from there. But in St. Thomas now, again, a similar thing has happened. You can probably shed some light on that.
Well, the one at Wesley, of which I was a founding member, we started in Mr. Jimmy Fraser, Julian Fraser, eldest brother, our elder brother, in his house out Tutu. Okay. We all live around there, and it was difficult to get in town to the market square to worship. And we used to meet in Mr. Jimmy's house. And then we were able to get a piece of land. And I remember weeding that land up, and a bunch of Totola people. Ivan had Ishmael's uncle, Ivan, my cousin Bob, and the Carl and Mercedes, a bunch of Totola people from all over Totola who were living in the Tutu area. Bennett Smith, mother Chedina, we were the ones who were the founding members of Wesley. I even taught Sunday school at Wesley. And I shouldn't say so, but I got to say it, I was quarterly meeting secretary. That's how high up. Okay. And I know now I backslide. Yeah, but that's how high up in the church I was in St. Thomas. I was quarterly meeting secretary.
So we are seeing then from that we, as a people called Methodist here in the BVI, we were so committed to our faith and our church that even wherever we went, we carried it with us.
Methodism went with us.
It went with us. So if there wasn't a Methodist church, no problem. We would build one.
We would build one.
And which is what those persons did.
And I tell you something. I was confirmed, baptized in the Methodist church. And when we moved to St. Thomas, my aunt decided to go to the Anglican church. And I was confirmed in the Anglican church when I was 12 years old. When I come on my own and I came back home, I went back to the Methodist church. I went and they didn't ask me what church I belonged to. The fact that I was from Bellevue, I had to be a Methodist.
Had to be a Methodist. And that was the only game in town.
They put me straight in Miss Lil George's class. And I never enlightened them either. And I'm still a Methodist without any confirmation or anything. But
well, I think we've really touched on, and the time is very short for us to go even further, but I think we've touched on some of the areas in terms of the outreach of the church, how the church impacted communities in terms of the activities of the church that helped to build the social side of the community, so that persons can see how they exist and being a part of community, being a part of the church. And I really want to thank you for coming and sharing with us in this conversation so that we can get a better idea, because now we even see that commitment to the church then extended beyond the shores of the BVI over into the U.S. Virgin Islands, where persons like yourself moved in later years, and then being Methodist, you figure, well, you still want to be a part, so you started the workings of what became a Methodist church and Methodist congregation.
I am sorry to say so. Methodism then and Methodism now is as far as Cane Garden Bay is from Manchester.
So what you're saying is that we still have work to do.
We still have
to pull it together. Mrs. Parsons, I really appreciate you coming and being a part of this conversation. And I want to thank you very much. And to our viewers, thank you for viewing. It's a pleasure. I'm Angel Smith, and I invite you to view yet another edition of Conversation as we speak about Methodist heritage in the British Virgin Islands. Thank you.